I am kind of winding down on a series that I've been working on for the last several weeks, and it's entitled Giving Up Something Bad for Lent. Of course, Lent is these 40 days prior to the celebration of Easter, and historically Christians have been asked to kind of commit to a deeper devotional practice, more prayer, and then to be deliberate in fasting from something during this season as a reminder of Jesus going into the wilderness prior to the start of his ministry for 40 days and helping prepare him for what was to come. And so we as Christians are encouraged to do the same. And many times when we fast during Lent, we take good things that we like. Meat on Friday, chocolate, caffeine, Facebook. These are all things we like. This season, I've been really encouraging us to go deeper. Why don't we make a concentrated effort to give up the bad things that none of us really want to admit to, but which we all struggle with? We're giving up bad things for Lent, like apathy, like envy, like condemning others, like running away from your problems. And today, I want to encourage all of us to maybe give up a bad habit for Lent. Now, we are all creatures of habit, aren't we? I mean, when you came to church today, Katie and Tom, where'd you sit? You sat there. It's habit, right? We, Alex and Judy, you're in the same spot. If you're not in your spot, I know something is out of kilter on the planet. No, really. We're creatures of habit, aren't we? When you go to work, you could probably take 100 different ways, really, to your particular workspace, right? But don't you end up pretty much going the same route every day? Why? These are just how our brains are kind of wired. And really, a habit is any regular routine that we do often unconsciously. Now, many of our habits are good habits, right? I know when on certain days of the week, I get up, I leave the house at about 10 till 7 to go work out. That's my habit. And that's a good thing. I come back, I go to my chair, my new chair right by the window where my bird feeders are for my devotional time. That's a good habit. And many of our habits are pretty neutral, let's be honest. Like how we brush our teeth or how we just do our regular, like how we shave in the morning. We have a certain pattern by maybe how we shave. That's just a neutral thing. And then there are the bad habits that if we were really honest with ourselves, we're rather embarrassed by. We see that as a sign of weakness, so we would rather not have. And I had, as I was preparing for this message, I had to confess that when I was a kid, many years ago, in elementary school, I got into this bad habit of chewing on the ends of my pencils or pens or whatever. And I know it's gross. I know I hate it. But when I'm deep in thought even now, you'll see me kind of thinking with a pen in my mouth. And I hate that, but now none of you will ever borrow a pen from me ever again. But we all have these kind of ingrained routines that kind of enter into our consciousness. And so this week I've been trying to study a little bit about the power of habits and how they can really both be blessings, but they can also be a deep, toxic nature in our lives. And what is it about a habit that kind of works its way into our lives? So I doing a little research this week, and I was reading an article by Charles Duhigg, who writes for the New York Times, and wrote a book called The Power of Habit. and gave a little video that I thought was intriguing. I thought you'd watch.
Imagine for a moment that you have a habit that you really want to change. Let's say, for instance, you go up to the cafeteria every afternoon and you eat a chocolate chip cookie. This habit has caused you to gain a little bit of weight. In fact, this habit has caused you to gain exactly 8 pounds, and your wife has started making some pointed comments. And when I say you, what I really mean is me, because this is a habit that I had that I just couldn't kick. To understand why that habit was so powerful and what it would take to change it, I had to learn how habits work. Every habit functions the same way. At first, there's a cue, some type of trigger that makes the behavior unfold automatically. Studies tell us that a cue can be a location, a time of day, a certain emotional state, other people, or just a pattern of behaviors that consistently triggers a certain routine. To figure out the cue for my craving, I spent a few days tracking exactly when the urge to eat a cookie hit. And what I noticed pretty soon was something interesting. The cookie craving always hit about between 3 o'clock and 3:30 in the afternoon. That was my cue. It was a certain time of day. The next part in the habit loop is the routine, the behavior itself. And for me, that was pretty easy to figure out. Every day between 3 and 3:30, I'd get this craving for a cookie. I'd get up out of my chair. I'd walk over to the elevator. I'd take the elevator up to the 14th floor. I'd get out. I'd buy a cookie, and then I would eat it while talking to my colleagues in the cafeteria. The last part of the habit loop is the reward. And in some respects, the reward is the most important part because that's why habits exist, so that we can get the rewards that we want. But figuring out a reward is kind of tricky. To figure out what reward was driving my habit, I did a little bit of an experiment. One day when the cookie urge struck, instead of going up to the cafeteria, I went outside and I took a walk around the block. Then the next day, I went up to the cafeteria, but instead of buying a cookie, I got a candy bar and then ate it at my desk. And then the day after that, I went up to the cafeteria again, but I didn't buy anything. Instead, I just talked to friends for about 10 minutes. You get the idea. What I was trying to do was test different hypotheses to figure out what reward I was actually craving. And what I figured out pretty quickly was it had nothing to do with cookies. It had to do with socializing. Nowadays what happens is at about 3:30 in the afternoon, I absentmindedly stand up, I look around the office, I see a friend, I'll walk over and we'll gossip for 10 minutes and then I'll go back to my desk. The urge to go get a cookie has completely disappeared. The new behavior has become a habit, and I've lost about 12 pounds as a result. Studies have shown that if you can diagnose your habits, you can change them in whichever way you want. So what are the cues, routines, and rewards in your life? What habit do you want to change?
On Tuesday of this week, Church of Lakes began a new ministry called Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery has pretty much been initiated as a passion, a vision of Rich and Sue Hirschman in our congregation. And it was based upon their own kind of life blessings that Celebrate Recovery did for them. Celebrate Recovery is really a Christ-centered, principle-based teachings of the Lord to help deal with hurts, hang-ups, and habits. And what the whole function of Celebrate Recovery is that within small groups, we become accountable to one another for our hurts, our habits, our hang-ups, and that we begin to kind of delve into the Scripture to find kind of principles to help reverse those habits that go so deeply ingrained within us. And as pastor of this congregation, I am so grateful for the start of this kind of ministry and Celebrate Recovery because, I have to deal with people in our community and our congregation that really kind of have deep struggles and find how much it has had devastating effects on their lives. Whether that might be a middle-aged man who finds that his only comfort at night comes by going to the liquor cabinet and basically drinking himself to sleep each and every day. And it's so much it's become ingrained as a habit. It's having detrimental effects on his work as in his relationship. Or perhaps it's the teenager who has really kind of developed a habit of purging because of her struggles with anorexia and kind of self-image and things like that. And after a while, that purging has just kind of become a habit of her life, and it's really threatening her health. Or perhaps it's that guy who recently retired who felt really he was smarter than the bookies, and he kind of got in the habits of playing sports betting. And as a result, he's drained his pension account and having devastating effects for his family. Or perhaps it's that woman who really likes to go out and purchase things and then watches the Home Shopping Network and QVC, and she purchases more things, and to the point of buying things that she really never even opens anymore. So much so that her children are concerned that she has become kind of a hoarder and having that kind of habitual behavior. All of these hurts, these hang-ups, and these habits that really have a toxic effect within our lives and in our relationships. And, certainly, habits are not a new phenomenon. 3,000 years ago, the writers of the book of Proverbs wrote down little short sayings that were collected and helped kind of reveal in very evocative and visual language about folly, or what constitutes folly. And in one of them, in the 26th chapter of Proverbs, there's this one that's really pretty poignant. It draws your attention. As a dog returns to its vomit, so does a fool return to its folly. Wow. That'll get your attention, won't it? But isn't that precisely kind of a apt description of what habits do? I mean, we keep going over and over and over again, and we expect different results. Well, I believe that Jesus Christ has come into our world to seek out and to save those who are struggling with hurts, hang-ups, and habits, and to offer kind of a new path to seek out and to save our lives. And that's why I want to turn to the story of a man who kind of got stuck into some pretty toxic habits by which Jesus offered a new path of life. And that is the story of Zacchaeus. Now, maybe you'll recall way back from Vacation Bible School days that Zacchaeus was that wee little man. A wee little man was he. He climbed up into sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. But it's in his story, I think, we can all find a path of healing and of hope for the toxic habits of our lives. Here it is, Luke chapter 19. I'm going to be reading verses 1 to 10. I'm going to be reading out of the New Revised Standard Version. It's a little different than your pew Bible, but you can follow along with me there. He, being Jesus, entered Jericho. He was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. He was trying to seek who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and he said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So Zacchaeus hurried down and was happy to welcome him. And all who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much. Then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost. This is God's word for God's people. Now, I think it's pretty critical to understand in this passage about Zacchaeus what the name Zacchaeus literally means. Remember, back in that culture, names had power. The word Jesus literally means Yahweh saves, okay? That name has significance. The name Zacchaeus literally means innocent and pure. That the day came when Zacchaeus was named innocent and pure by his mother and by his father. And yet, by the time we read this story, we see that how different bad habits began to have had a detrimental effect on Zacchaeus. We see that he had defrauded others, that he had become the chief tax collector, and that as a result, he had grown quite wealthy, but he had become a pariah. He had become ostracized by his community because he had defrauded businessmen and had cheated the people. And that as an agent of Rome, he was particularly kind of looked down upon by his fellow citizens in the region of Jericho. And so that's what's kind of important to set the stage of what's happened. And what we discover is that the word begins to spread that Jesus has come into town. And I think, obviously, Zacchaeus finds that there's something lacking in his life, that he has developed so many bad habits. I mean, after you steal a little bit here and defraud and embezzle a little bit there, after a while, it just kind of becomes so routine. And yet, what Zacchaeus began to discover is the very thing that he thought he would want, his riches, was actually, if you're so rich, but you have no way to be able to cherish or enjoy your wealth, then what good is it? I think that's what Zacchaeus is beginning to understand. He's a pariah in the community. He's looked down by everyone. He is mocked and ostracized, and he knows that something's wrong. And perhaps there's a deep yearning within him to kind of rediscover his name. He wants to be innocent. He wants to be pure. And so he gets word that this Jesus is coming to town. And in this story that I read to you from Luke, I think it offers a clear pathway by where we too can break some bad habits in our lives and become to discover the people God created us to be. Here's the first step that I think is essential to life. That is, Zacchaeus began to realize that he was responsible, that he was the one who was his own worst enemy, and that a lot of toxic trash had begun to accumulate in his life. And so, in order to find healing in life, you've got to, first of all, make the decision to carry your trash to the curb. If you want to get better, if you want to get rid of the toxins in your life, you have to acknowledge that you are responsible, that you have to own your life, that this was not thrust upon you, that you made decisions that have led to your particular predicament. I tell people all the time, the first step in healing in life is to, first of all, own your life. It's not because of what your parents did. It's not because of what happened to you. You have to own your life. And this is what Zacchaeus begins to do. He begins to realize that there has been toxic trash, and so he begins to seek out who Jesus Christ is. He's willing to carry his garbage to the curb. I got a good buddy of mine. I love him. He lives far away, so that's why I can talk about him. my buddy, he is a bright dude. He's got a wonderful job. And yet he has this habit of accumulating trash, okay? Now, I mean, if I'd go to his condominium right now, I guarantee you I could find pizza boxes from 8 months ago, okay? I promise you he's got a stack of newspapers that are up to my waist, okay? Magazines that go back a period of 4 years that he just takes. And now he's got a dumpster for his condominium association right down at the bottom of the step. He's perfectly physically capable. He can beat me badly in tennis. So it's not an issue of not having the capability. There's just something that's kind of ingrained within him that he's unwilling to take his trash to the dumpster or to the recyclable center. And I looked at him, I said, "What are you doing?" And, he kind of hums and haws, and then he goes right back to the same habit. He'll call somebody in. They'll clean his house. He has the means to do that. They'll clean his house, and then in about 6 months, it's exact the way it was. And what is about that? Well, ultimately, he doesn't really kind of own what his predicament is. He's not willing to kind of carry his trash to the curb, friends. If we want to find a path of healing from a bad habit, you first got to recognize that you got to carry that toxicity away from who you are, okay? Step one. Step two, as we see in the story, is that you've got to be willing to climb a tree and gain some perspective. We notice that Zacchaeus is short of stature and that the crowd is in his way. And sometimes if we had that particular predicament, you might just be resigned to kind of allowing the crowd to continue to be in your way and to allow barriers for your encounter with a living Lord. But Zacchaeus, to his credit, not only does he willing to carry his trash to the curb, he's willing to climb a tree and get a new perspective. I believe deeply that one of the great functions and purposes of worship and of devotions and of service is that it gives us a little broader perspective. We get so enmeshed into our own reality that perhaps what worship can do, what devotions can do, is give you a new set of lenses by which to kind of see the world. And that's what Zacchaeus is doing. And not only is he willing to climb a tree, he's willing to face some ridicule. He's willing to go out on a limb. I mean, just think of the mocking that his fellow people of Jericho said. Who's that short little dude climbing up a tree? Ha ha, laugh, laugh, snicker, snicker. He's willing to face some ridicule. And friends, I think in the same way, if we want to encounter a living Lord, there will be times when we will face ridicule for our faith. I mean, there are many of your colleagues at work or your neighbors, they sit there and think that it's foolishness for you to come to worship. It is stupid for you to participate in church. The church just wants your money, and that's how their mindset goes. But you're deliberately trying to make the decision to climb a tree in a sense, gain a new vantage point, willing to risk something in order to encounter a Savior and a Lord. So not only carry the trash out, not only to climb a tree, but then you got to confirm the offer that has been given to you. Notice in this passage that Jesus is going through town, and who is it that initiates the relationship between Jesus and Zacchaeus? It's not Zacchaeus, it's Jesus. That even before our awareness, that God is constantly initiating a connection with us. As John Wesley would say, it's God's prevenient grace going on before our awareness. That all we have to do is to respond to that. We have to confirm the offer. And that, when that offer comes and we do confirm it, if we acknowledge it and ask for God's grace to come into our lives, we better kind of promptly do so. It talks about how Zacchaeus literally scampered down the tree. And you got to realize he didn't sit there and say, well, I'll wait until another day. Or maybe when I get older, or perhaps when I go to retirement, and then I can worry about my faith. Because the reality, friends, we don't know how many days we really have. And so you better cherish the moment. You better seize the opportunity to confirm your faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And then not only carry the trash to the curb, not only climb the tree, not only confirm the offer, but then you got to be willing to make some changes. Sometimes people say, well, all that I have to do is kind of, weep and come down to the altar and cry and have tears come down, and then I can go back and live just like I always did. That's not the case for Zacchaeus. You notice what he says? He says, first of all, I'm being willing to give half of what I've been given to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone, I will give them 4 times. That's over and above what was required by the law. You see, what Zacchaeus is beginning to realize is that you've got to be willing to change some things about you. That, certainly God will take us for who we are, but he will not leave us there. He'll want to shape us and mold us into Christ's image. And so, friends, I think that's what this story of Zacchaeus is all about. It's all about life transformation, of being willing to give up bad habits like that Zacchaeus faced, of embezzlement and of cheating others, and willing to become now a son of the covenant as Jesus offered to him. He was willing to change his life, to really recharge his batteries and give him a new lease. That's what the gospel of Jesus Christ is all about. It's about new opportunities to change. A couple weeks ago, down in the southeast corner of our church parking lot, we put a new recyclable bin. That's where if you had those old pizza boxes that have been around for 6 months, or newspapers or magazines, you can kind of go and you can take them to our recyclable bin and place them in there. What I love about recycling is that we're not sticking it in a landfill and clogging up our landfills of our country. But I think even beyond that, is the idea of what recycling and repurposing is all about. Because you see those old cardboard pizza boxes, those old newspaper, they can be kind of remolded, reshaped according to what their original purpose, to be new newspapers, new cardboard. And I think that's a great kind of image about what God can do in our lives. That if we sit there and we open ourselves to being shaped and formed, that we can continue to have a purpose and a function in life. We can be recycled in God's most holy of image. And I think that's possible because of this last verse that I read. Because we have a God who came to seek us out and to save us. If you look in Luke chapter 19, there's one word that keeps jumping out at you, and it's the Greek word zeteo. Zeteo means seek. In verse 3, it talks about how Zacchaeus sought out Jesus. In verse 10, it talks about how Jesus came to seek and to save those who are lost. And perhaps, friends, the greatest news I want to end with is this, that we have the kind of God who, if we're willing to carry our trash to the curb, if we're willing to climb a tree with new perspective, if we are willing to confirm an offer of a relationship, we're willing to change some toxic pattern, then Christ can repurpose us, can shape and form us according to his holy will. Give up a bad habit for this Lent. That's what Christ enables us to do.